lovelies, welcome to another beautiful segment of J Culture. How are you guys doing? I trust you guys are doing fabulous. Thank you so much for your support and your love. I am so excited for today's class. In today's class, we're going to be learning another beautiful topic. We're going to be learning how to draft the basic pants or trouser. Please note, pants or trouser means the same thing. In some countries, they call it pants, while in other countries, they call it trouser. So they mean the same thing, okay? So, firstly, we're going to understand the meaning of pants or trouser. So we're going to be using one of the term. The term we're going to be using is trouser. Trouser is a garment that covers the lower body from the waist to the ankles with a separate section for each leg. This is made with two leg sections joined at the crotch and waistband. That's what separates trouser from skirts and shorts. The measurements we'll be using for the pattern draft is waist circumference 35, hip circumference 42, thigh circumference 26 rather. Thigh circumference is 26. The waist to knee length is 23. The knee circumference is 18. The ankle circumference is 15. The crotch depth is 11. The waist to the full length, that's the waist to the ankle, is 40. First thing we need to do is to draw out our guideline. So this will serve as our waistline. I'm just going to draw out this guideline. It's just to direct us, okay? It's not the center line, please. It's just to direct us. Okay, now we're going to place our measurements. Firstly, we're going to put the full length of the pants. Here, the full length of the pants is 40. So you place your tape on the waistline and take 40. I'm going to use 1.5 inches for folding allowance. You can decide to use 2 inches for folding allowance or 1 inch. It depends on what you want to achieve for the design. The next thing we do is to take the crotch depth. For instance, you forget to take your client's crotch depth, all you need to do is to divide the hip by 4. Whatever you get, you add half an inch for ease. Okay, here we have the crotch depth of the client. We have 11. So what we need to do is to add half an inch or 1/4 inch for ease. So we're going to mark 11.5 inches for ease. I'm just going to extend it. Now we're going to rule out. So this becomes the crotch depth line. Now to get the knee length, for instance, you forget to take your client's knee length, that's from the waist to the knee measurements. All you need to do is to place your tape rule on the crotch depth line and take the remaining measurements of the trouser. Whatever you get, you divide it by 2. Here we have 28.5. You divide it by 2 to get the midpoint. You just mark the midpoint. On that midpoint, you take it up by 2 inches. Okay, you take it up by 2 inches. For clients that are very tall, you can use 2 inches, but for average clients, you can use 2.5 inches or 3 inches. Okay, it depends on the height of your client. So here we'll be using 2 inches. Let's measure it and see what we have. We have 12.25 inches. So we're just going to extend it and rule out. So let's take the measurement from the waist to the knee length. You see what we have? We have 23.5. For our measurements, we have 23 inches. So we can still do with 23 inches or 23.5 inches. So it will be our knee length. While labeling here as full length. Having done that, we're going to take the hip circumference. The hip circumference is 42. 42 divided by 4 is 10.5 inches, okay? So from this very line, from this grain line, we're going to take 10.5 inches. We'll take it up to the waist. Then we'll connect it. Having done that, we're going to label here cross length. Cross length. Now we want to get the cross length extension, okay? So we're just going to extend this very line to get our cross length extension. To get the cross length extension, whatever you've gotten from the hip, you divide it by 4. Here we have 10.5 inches as the hip. We'll divide it, we'll get 1/4 of that 10.5 inches by dividing it by 4. When you divide it by 4, we'll be having 2/5/8. So that will be the cross length extension. Then you add 1/2 inch for ease. Now to get the curve line, you can just put your tape on the waistline and take the midpoint of the cross depth. You divide it by 2 by getting the midpoint of the cross depth. You can use your ruler to curve it. You make sure your ruler meets on the cross depth line and the cross length line. You just connect it like so. Connect it like so. Or what you do is to take 1 inch from this angle. You take it up by 1 inch, or you take it up by 1/4 inches. You can see it's meeting on the line. It's meeting on the curve line. So now we have our cross length extension, the complete extension. Now we're going to come to the hip to take the depth of the hip. You can use 8 inches or 8 inches or 9 inches depending on the size of your client. Here we're going to be using 8.5 inches for the hip depth. So I'm going to extend it. Then I'll rule out. Having done that, we're going to take the measurement of the waist. The waist is 35. 35 divided by 4 will give us 8.75 inches. So we're going to place our tape on the cross length line. That's how we're going to take the measurement. Then we'll mark 8.75 inches here. You can use 1/2 inch for ease, or you can decide to leave it this way. For me, I prefer to add 1/2 inch for ease. So this is what we'll be having. Now we'll be having 9.25 inches for the waist, okay? So if you want to add your dart for some trouser, some persons like to add that in front, but I don't do that in front. I only add my dart at the back of the trouser. But for in case you want to add your dart in front, all you need to do is to mark the midpoint of your trouser. Then you mark on that midpoint, you take it forward by 1/2 inch and inward by 1/2 inch. So you'll be having 1 inch for the dart intake. Then on the waistline, you take it down by 3 inches or 3.5 inches. Then you take a long ruler and connect it like so. So this is the dart intake. Then you have to replace the dart intake, which is 1 inch. So you add it up 1 inch here. So you connect it to the hip with your hip curve ruler. This is too long, so you can just use your hip curve ruler. So you see, this is the dart, and this is the dart, the replacement of the dart. But I'm not going to be using that for the front pants, so you can decide to add it. So I'm just showing us how we can add our dart to the front trouser, okay? But I'm not using that for the front trouser. Now we'll come to the knee line. To get your knee line, first what we need to do is to get the midpoint of the front trouser. All you need to do is to place the tape on the full measurement. You just take the measurement from the extension of the cross length. Please note you don't have to add the half an inch ease, okay? You minus the half an inch ease. You just place it on the measurement of the extension. Then you measure the remaining parts of the pant. That's the circumference, okay? Whatever you have here, you divide it by 2. Here we have 13.3/8. So you get the midpoint. So let's measure it to see what we have. Now we have 6.75. We'll take it down to the hemline of the trouser. That's 6.75. Please note, from your crotch depth line, we'll be dividing by 2. So on the knee line, we're going to be dividing the measurement by 2. The knee circumference is 18. 18 divided by 2 gives us 9 inches. So we're going to divide that 9 inches by 2 again. The reason is because of this line. So when you divide 9 inches by 2, we're going to be having 4.5 inches. So from this line, you take it in by 4.5 here. Then you take it out by 4.5 here. So we'll be having 9 inches as our knee. I'll be having 9 inches, okay? That's 18 inches for the knee circumference. Then we'll come to the ankle. The ankle circumference is 15. We'll divide 15 by 2, give us 7.5. Then we'll divide 7.5 by 2. We'll have 3.75. From the middle line, you take it in by 3.75. Then you take it out by 3.75. So you see we'll be having 7.5 inches. Now we're going to connect with a straight ruler. After connecting with your straight ruler, we're going to use the hip curve ruler, or you can use a very curved ruler to connect the knee line to the hip line. So this is how you're going to place the ruler, okay? That curved area, you place it this way and connect. And make sure you blend this very line. It should not be a sharp area. Then you come to the inseam of the trouser. You place your ruler like so and give it a roll. So this is what we'll be having for our front trouser. One more thing, we're going to come to the waistline. We'll take it down by 1 inch or 1.5 inches, or you can still use half an inch for the depth of the front trouser, okay? The reason is because of the size of your clients. Some clients have a protruding stomach, while others have a flat stomach. So depend on the size of your client's stomach. So here we're going to be using 1 inch. I'm going to connect it to the hip, we're going to connect it to the waist line. So this is what we'll be having. So we'll come to the folding allowance area. All you need to do is to fold the allowance backward, okay? When you want to cut, fold it backward so that you have the same spacing when you want to actually fold. You fold it backward so that when you are sewing, you will not have some inconveniences. Then you cut. So this is what we'll be having for the front trouser. So you see. Now I'm going to draw out the back pattern of the trouser. Firstly, I'm going to draw the guideline. Like you're seeing, I'm giving space above, okay? We're going to use it later. You can give 1 inch space above or 1.5 inches, depending on what you. So this will serve as our waistline. And I'm also going to do same at the side. Please, the side line is not giving anything, okay? It's just a directive for the trouser because of the cutting of the paper. If the paper is not straight enough, so you just draw your guideline. Having done that, we place the measurement of the trouser, which is 40. The full length of the trouser is 40. From the waistline, we measure 40 down. Then we'll use 1.5 inches for folding allowance. Then I'll extend it. So I'm going to rule out. Having done that, we're going to take the measurement of the crotch depth. We have 11.5 inches, okay? So I'm going to place 11.5 inches here. So I'm going to extend it. Then I'll rule out. So I'm going to label crotch depth line. So to get the knee length, you place your tape on the crotch depth line. You take the remaining measurement of the trouser. We have 28.5 inches to divide by 2. To get the midpoint, you just mark here. Then on the midpoint, you take it up by 2 inches to get the knee line. So here we're having 12.25 inches. So I'm just going to extend it and rule out. So we have 12.25 inches here as the knee line. Here is going to be the full length. So the next thing we'll do is to take the hip circumference, which is 42, divide by 4 will give us 10.5 inches. So from this very line, we'll take it forward by 10.5 inches, okay? We'll take it upward to the waistline. Then we'll connect them with a straight rule. Now we're going to take the extension. That's here is the crotch length. So the crotch length extension from this angle, whatever you have for the hip, you know the hip circumference is 42, you divide it by 4, it becomes 10.5 inches. So that 10.5 inches, you divide it by 2. So half of the hip will make a crotch length extension. So when you divide 10.5 by 2, it will give us 5.25 inches. So from this crotch length line, we'll place our tape to mark 5.25 inches. Then we'll add half an inch for ease. So this becomes our crotch length extension, okay? So do not forget. Now we're going to come to the crotch length line. We're going to place our tape on the waist and take the measurement of the crotch depth to get the midpoint. So we're going to do it like so. We're going to mark the midpoint. So this is what we have, okay? So now we're going to come to the waist to take the measurements of the waist. The measurement of the waist is 35. 35 divided by 4 will give us 8.75. So we're going to place our tape here on the crotch length line to mark 8.75 inches. Then we'll add half an inch for ease. So here becomes our waist measurement. So if you want to add your dart at the back, remember every trouser must have a dart at the back, okay? You can decide not to add your darts in front of the trouser. You can decide not to add the dart, but you must add your dart at the back. And also varies for some fabric, so you can also decide not to add that at the back, okay? It depends on what you want to achieve. So we're going to mark the midpoint of the waist. Here we have 9.25. We're going to mark the midpoint. On the midpoint, we'll take it in by half an inch. Then we'll take it half an inch here. So we'll be having 1 inch for dart intake. From the waist, we'll take it down by 3.5 inches for the dart depth. So we're going to connect it with a straight ruler. So this is how you're going to connect it. Now we're going to replace the dot that we took here. We're going to replace it back to the measurement so that we can get a complete measurement. So we'll mark here and add 1 inch. So we'll connect it to the hip. Now we're going to take the hip depth measurement, which is 8.5 inches. So we're going to connect it to the hip. So this is what we have. Now we'll come to the waist. We'll take it in by 1 inch on the waistline. We'll take it in by 1 inch. So on that 1 inch, we'll take it up by half an inch. These very measurements depend on the size of the client's back. This half an inch upward from the waistline. It depends on the client's back. Okay, if the client has a very big back, you can decide to use 1.5 inches or 1 inch. If the client's back is average, you can use 1 inch, and if the client's back is normal, you can use half an inch. Okay, it just depends on the back of the client. So we'll put half an inch here, then we'll connect it to the midpoint of the cross length line with a straight ruler. Then we use our armhole curve ruler. We place it like so to give it that curve. From the midpoint, we connect it to the cross depth line or the cross length line extension. Okay, so let me just label it so we don't get confused. So this arrow signifies the extension, cross length extension. Okay, so having done that, we'll come to the knee. To get the knee measurement like we did in the front pattern, we're going to place the tape on this point. Please do not add the half an inch ease. Okay, so place it on this point, on this cross length extension point. Then you take the measurement. We have 16 here. We'll divide it by 2 to get the midpoint. We'll take it down. 16 divided by 2 give us 8 inches. So we'll take it down to the full length of the trouser. So it will now serve as the center point of the back trouser. Having done that, now we're going to take the measurement of the knee. The knee circumference is 18. 18 divided by 2 give us 9 inches. So from this line, we're going to divide that 9 inches by 2. So we'll take it in by 4.5. After dividing by 2, we get 4.5 here. Then you mark 4.5 here. It's just for you to be accurate. So this line, it guides you. So now we have 9 inches. Okay, so we'll take the measurement of the ankle or the bottom of the trouser. We have 15 inches as the ankle circumference. So 15 divided by 2 will give us 7.5. When you divide 7.5 by 2, it will give us 3.75. So from this line, we'll take it in by 3.75 here. Then we'll take it forward by 3.75 here. When we take the measurements, we'll have 7.5 inches. Now we're going to use our straight ruler to connect from the knee to the hemline of the trouser. We're also going to do the same at this side. So we're going to use the hip curve ruler or a very curve ruler to connect the hip line to the knee line. Okay, so this is how we're going to place our ruler. So you make a good rule. Make sure the knee line is not curvy, is not pointy rather. You make sure it blends. You just have to blend it with your hand. Then you place this ruler this position, okay, at the other side. That's the inseam of the trouser. You place it like so. So this is what you do. So this is what we'll be having so far. Now we'll come to the waistline. From this 1 inch that we took in, we'll take it up by half an inch. This half an inch also varies. You know, some clients have big butts. Some clients that have big butts, you can use 2 inches or 1.5 inches or even 1 inch. So it depends on the butt of your client. So for this part, I'm going to be using half an inch upward from the waist. Okay, so I'm going to connect it to that half an inch. Then I'm connecting it back to the waistline. So this is what we'll be having. Now I'll come to the cross depth line or the cross length line, which is a full extension. I'll take it down by half an inch. Okay, the reason why we'll be taking it down by half an inch so that it will align with the front cross length. So this line becomes the new cross length or cross depth line. So I'm just going to take the measurement and make sure we are not shorting out of the measurement. Okay, now we're going to add the sewing seam allowance. Remember, we did not add any sewing seam allowance at the front trouser. So whatever sewing seam allowance we were supposed to add to the front, we're going to transfer it to the back. Okay, so on the we're using 2 inches for the sewing seam allowance. We're just going to add sewing seam allowance from the waist down to the full length of the trouser. So here I'm going to extend the midpoint of the cross length. Let me take the measurement. Here we have 5.5 inches. So I'll take it forward by 5.5 inches. Then I will rule out. So from here, I'll start taking the 2 inches sewing seam allowance. If you want to use elastic for your trouser, like elastic band for your trouser, you just have to add 3 inches sewing allowance. Okay, 3 inches sewing allowance. Remember, you're going to be using half an inch for your sewing seam. Okay, half an inch for your sewing seam. So I'll take it down. On the cross line, I'll take it 2 inches. Okay, on the knee line, I'll also take 2 inches. On the hem line, 2 inches. So from the hem line to the knee, we're going to use a straight ruler to connect. Then from the knee line to the cross line, we use the very curved ruler or the hip curve ruler to connect it. So on the cross extension, we use the armhole curve ruler to connect it. So this is how you place the armhole curve ruler. Okay, so you connect it like so. So from the midpoint of the cross length line, we use a straight ruler to connect it to the waistline. So this is what we'll be having for the back trouser. Now we can cut out. But before we cut out, I'm going to fold in this folding allowance in. I'm going to fold it in. So these are back and this is our front trouser. So you can cut directly, you can transfer it to your fabric and cut. Then for the zip extension, you can decide to add your zip extension. Okay, let me quickly do that. So you can decide to add your zip extension for the front pants. So I've already marked this place in case you want to cut it with the front pants. Okay, so what you do is, let me just extend this line. Let me make it shown. So this is our center front. Okay, so this is what we have for the trouser. So to extend the zipper, or you call it flap, which anyone is that is suitable for you. So what you do is to take it by 2 inches forward, you take it down, then from the waistline take it down by 7 inches or 8 inches, depending on how your zip is going to be lengthy. Okay, so I'm going to mark 7 inches here. That's where the flap or the zipper extension will end. So I'm just going to make a straight line to connect them. Okay, then here I'm going to curve. You just use your hand to make a curve, or you can make a straight line, which anyone you desire. So I'm going to fold before I cut out, so that it will align with the waistline. Okay, so this is how you do it. You fold it so that there will not be shortage. So you cut out the excesses and open it. So you cut like so. So you see, this is how the zipper extension will look like. Zip extension. So when you are sewing your zip, you can just fold it in. Okay, fold it in, or you can also cut it separately from the trouser. Okay, so all you need to do is just to unmask it. So this is what you have for the zipper extension. So this is what we have for our basic pattern trouser, or you can call it the basic pattern pants. Okay, please don't get confused with the terms. You can either use trouser or pants. So please, before you cut, make sure you place your fabric on fold before you cut the front pattern and the back pattern. Okay, and please do not forget to share, like, subscribe to my channel, and please turn on your notification button for more videos. Thank you and bye.